I started out by cleaning up the survey. I didn't want to use any of the original plan. And then what we do is we convert everything to spatial data, which AutoCAD can't actually do that well. We put in the existing streets, paving, and the homes. Typically, if this was a real job where we would try to actually replicate the homes in 3Ds for the public meeting so we could bring people into their homes and then see what they would see out the back window. Now, our topo is digital and it's internal the whole time, so what we did was we took the topo, we reduced it down to its main factors, and then from there we create a digital terrain model, and these purple lines you see here is to not have any flat areas and replicate the topo, because if I take the data and then I look at the mathematical data, this is what we have left over. So for example, I could go into contour setup and let's take a look at the same topo at every quarter foot. And then if I refresh the screen, it will calculate the topo through there every quarter foot. And it's basically an intelligence. And that way we can manipulate the topo and get far more accurate than you would with just contour lines in a CAD system. So what we do is we then take the site plan and then we just import that file, which was this one here, into the plan, and then once it's imported, it's just an intelligence, and we can design with that. It's a much easier system and far more powerful than possible in CAD. So we start with a really good base. When we took a look at the previous design, there's quite a few things that concern me. First of all, the units that they used had no relationship to the units that were sent to us. I'm not sure what's going on here. There's a fictitious line, this line here, 45 on that layer. So if I thicken that up so you could see it a little bit better, go to the right layer before I thicken it up, and then so this is how they calculate impervious surface. That's kind of not the best way to do it. We do it a completely different way. It's setting up some kind of a perimeter on top of a perimeter. So you've got layers on top of layers on top of layers. And instead, because we use spatial intelligence, we can eliminate all that mishmash. And the lots were 20 foot wide by 75 feet. We kept that configuration. And again, the units were quite a bit smaller. And this plan is incredibly inefficient. It looks efficient, so some of the other things are, it's very cookie cutter. As you go down the road here, you see the rears. The rears happen to be fairly attractive on this, so it's not terrible, but this is going to look just like a project. These units, when they look out their back window, there's these bioretention areas. Bioretention, you know, we're from Minnesota. Bioretention was the thing to do until they all went bad. And now bioretention, nobody does anymore. The dimensions, the minimums, and everything I just took off the plan. The other thing is we didn't have these, there's 3 buildings of some other form of unit, and you can see it was changed to regular townhomes here, townhome lots. The commercial itself has a building in here, very little parking for a 60 by 120 foot building, and it is surrounded by pavement. So you have a ton of pavement with very few stalls. I've made it a lot more efficient, but I'll talk about that here in a bit. The other thing is this utility easement. We're crossing the utility easement. I assume we could cross it with driveways. So I'm trying to use every linear foot of pavement as possible, so overall the pavement area should be considerably less with the plan that we came up with. So let's show you what we did. And again, you could see the commercial area, we're coming in about the same, increasing the parking spaces. I think I've got pretty much double, if not more, parking spaces. So we're able to increase the square footage of the commercial. I don't have loading docks in the back. I have social area. And I put the biodetention ponds by the wetlands. So the drainage is actually here in the middle, so when you're coming down the road, you'll be drawn in. We don't have units looking out their back window directly into another unit, so every unit has a great view of the space. I did do some slight modifications on the boundary line to clean it up, but essentially it's the same boundary. It's just that the area might be slightly different by a few square foot because I just kind of cleaned up a few little things here. As far as guest parking, I believe we have about the same. I didn't go into all the little details, so we've got this 14 acres of land over here, and I believe I have a few more units than they have on their site. But you can see these units are considerably less. Now, what we're looking at here is we've detailed all the floors. We do that to create the 3D models. And instead of a 2-foot random offset, what I did was we had a 4-foot offset so we could put some windows and some views out into space. That makes a lot more difference in the upper floors. The walk itself and the pavement width is the same, except I'm using a 20-foot minimum from the edge of the walk. I believe that the previous plan would have cars overlapping the walk, which would render those walks pretty useless. I did add a front porch on the units, and so we broke down all the geometry. Again, everything is, you see, if it's colored or textured, it goes into a list, and that way that list, whether when I snap to something, if I snap to it, that should say drive or driveway. You can see the square footage up here. That's the living space on that floor, garage space, and we even break it down to the individual walls and windows and decks and everything. So everything is listed, so if I wanted to hit chart and return, it will show you the net site, the smaller site, and then each color or texture as it relates to what's on the plan, and then it shows it in the list here, the total areas, and then the man-made impacts. So the idea is this is like the miles per gallon on a car, and the lower the number, the more efficient the plan. So essentially, as you go to a planning commission or council, you don't want them to see the numbers. What you want to do is say, look, here's what we're building, look at all the green space left over. So the charts are much more effective on creating, getting approvals. So that's the basis. And then as I was working on this, it took me about 6 hours total. I sent the floor footprints and everything to Ricky. Ricky concurrently was building the buildings. And so now I want to show you what this thing looks like in a virtual setting. So once we do the site plan in Land Mentor, and I did the proposed grading, and often I'll do the earthwork, but I didn't bother to do it on this one. We dug up some dirt here so that we could raise up and elevate the units. Of course, whenever the units are above the grade, then they look better. So this is what it looks like in SketchUp. The white things are Enscape assets, and SketchUp is very cartoonish. You wouldn't want to use it for, going to meetings, and it's just not acceptable. Then you have the other end of the spectrum, like some of the upper end packages, and to get to this stage, it'll cost you $40,000 or $50,000. So the nice thing is about SketchUp is this Enscape add-on. And with Enscape, it turns it into a completely different situation. So it's not Lumion quality, but it gets there pretty close, but it's also extremely efficient, as it turns the site into a video game. And you can control with the Xbox 360 controller, you can control the sun, you can do so many things with it just with one hand. And then it turns it into something that, instead of hiring a consultant, anybody in 5 minutes can learn how to use this. You don't need any software. And then you could go into the units, you could go around the site just using the Xbox 360 controller, And I'm no expert on video gaming, let me tell you. So what happens is we're like an assembly line. So as we do the plan, either Adam and I, Ricky's doing the 3D concurrently, and so everything comes together at the end of the day. So for example, it took me about maybe an hour to convert the AutoCAD files to Land Mentor to do the site planning, and then it took 6 hours to do the plan. And then what happens is Ricky puts this together once I export the site into SketchUp, and then we used, he had the buildings done, and then all he had to do was pop them on the site, put cars, trees, and people, and then, at the end of a 8-hour day, we have not only a plan that's significantly nicer, but we deliver work that no other firm is doing in that short of a time. So a lot of it has to do with Land Mentor. Most of it has to do with the methods that we have internally that we don't share with people, of course, as we don't want that competition, to have that advantage. So as I was saying before about the showcasing, you had nice looking buildings. We also added the windows on the end units. Before you had no windows. Over here in Minnesota, I could tell you end units are about $10,000 to $15,000 more, but it's $0 more if there's no windows there. The whole idea of an end unit is using windows. And of course, those windows should be a whole lot more significant. So a few things is showcasing. So we wanted, instead of seeing a row of homes, this is what you would see as you go through the development. Do you think that would make you want to actually live there? Before you had units that were overlooking other units. Of course, I don't know the history of the site. I didn't get into it. It's a demo project. This works. This is far more efficient. I only have one area where we're slightly inefficient right here just to gain those units, to get the unit count the same, or I think that we might have a few more units. Again, the commercial area, we have the strip center, but these are front-loaded. It's not very big. The front-loaded units, if it's retail or even if it's office, we have this, the back of it is a social area. So this was loading docks before, loading docks behind residential. So where would you rather live? Would you rather live looking at loading docks or that nice social area? These over here, these units are your floor plans. You could go in, you could move about, and experience it. The other thing is the 4-foot stagger that we've got. Before they had a 2-foot stagger, so we added some windows so you get some views of space. And the plan itself is just a lot more interesting with a lot more character than what you had before. It's just a lot nicer place to live. Did we do anything magic? Absolutely not. We're just better at making things more efficient and less and more elegant. Just a lot better. Just put a little bit of detail. Now with the less pavement, again, we do have that stagger in the units to get more glass area, and it should be quite a bit cheaper to develop, I would think, but it's all about using the space and the geometry better. And as I said before, it's an attention to detail that the technology allows us to do, because in CAD it is so complex. They're just trying to get the job out. In our systems and our tech and our methods, we don't have that problem. So we can use the tech to take the time to think this thing through and add the detail and the character to give a much better neighborhood and a much more functional neighborhood, more attractive, and not bust the budget. And that's the key thing. I did move the ponding. I thought, even though it's not the low ground, we moved the ponding to be more visible, more marketable, and essentially every unit, 100% of these units are premium. You can't say that about the other plan. As far as cost, if we were to have contracted this, we would be looking at, a day's worth of work, and generally if I put down a presentation like I'm doing now, that hour, or so would be charged, and you'd be looking roughly $2,500 to get to this point. As the approval, we have a per lot fee or per unit fee. You would be roughly looking at around $40,000. So that's where we make our money.